At Revenge Mosaicum, we sometimes recognize a story not by what happens, but by who doesn't show up when it matters. This one settled that way, quiet, undeniable. A room prepared for people who believed they were too important to stand in it. Iris Langston's experience stayed with us because absence became the loudest decision her family ever made. This is how she remembers it. The monitor clicked once, then again, slower than before. A nurse adjusted the blanket and looked at the doorway longer than she needed to. "She's comfortable," she said. "You can stay." I nodded and pulled the chair closer to my mother's bed. Her hand felt lighter than it should have. Still warm. Still here. My phone buzzed. Not a call. A calendar alert. Victor's surgery. Simone's board meeting. No missed calls. No texts. The door stayed closed. I leaned in. "I'm here. Mom." Her eyes didn't open, but her fingers twitched, like she'd heard me and decided that was enough. The nurse cleared her throat. "Do you want me to call anyone?" "No," I said too quickly, then softer. "They know where she is." She nodded once and stepped out. We noticed how the hallway stayed quiet, not respectful, just uninterested. "I didn't bring anything," I told my mother. No laptop, no reports, just me. My throat tightened. I let it happen. No point pretending in a room like this. The door opened a crack. Another nurse peeked in. Still, no one. I shook my head. She hesitated, then said, "I'll be right outside," and left it at that. I pressed my forehead to the edge of the bed. "They're busy," I whispered, "saving other people." For a second, I almost believed that explanation. We noticed the moment Iris stopped checking her phone. My mother's breathing changed, slower, uneven. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "You don't have to hold on for them." Her hand squeezed mine. Just once. That was when I understood. This wasn't about medicine. It never had been. If this stayed with you, you know where to find the rest of our stories. The monitor clicked again, then waited. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. No music, just the hum and the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to my coat. Victor called while I was in the lobby. "I heard you were there," he said, brisk, like we were syncing schedules. "How is she?" "She's dying." A pause. Papers shuffled. A voice in the background asked him about timing. "I can't step away right now," he said. "You understand." "I do." That wasn't true, but it ended the conversation faster. Simone texted 10 minutes later, "In meetings all day. Keep me posted." I didn't answer. At home, I set my bag down and noticed my hands were shaking. I ran them under the tap until they stopped. Cold helped. Growing up, the Langston rules were simple. White coats mattered. Titles mattered. Outcomes mattered. Feelings were something you managed quietly so they didn't interfere. At family dinners, conversations stayed above the table. Surgical counts, board approvals, grants. When I talked about systems or strategy, the room went polite. "That's interesting," Simone used to say, already turning back to Victor. Once, I mentioned how a new diagnostic platform could cut wait times across clinics. Victor smiled, distracted. "Real medicine happens in rooms like mine," he said, "not on screens." I learned when to stop talking. That night, I stood in my kitchen, phone face down, and realized something had shifted. Not cracked, shifted. They weren't cruel. They were consistent. And consistency, when you're on the wrong side of it, feels a lot like being erased. The first time Victor called me after midnight, his voice was tight. "Our system's down," he said. "Patients are stacking up." I pulled my laptop closer and asked which wing. He didn't thank me. He didn't need to. This was family. I worked until morning, coffee going cold beside me. By sunrise, admissions were flowing again. No data lost. No alerts triggered. When I sent the final note, he replied with a thumbs up. That became the pattern. Simone called when her hospital rolled out a new intake tool and the numbers didn't line up. "We need cleaner logic," she said. "Can you look? I spent the weekend rebuilding it." Wait, times dropped. Staff stopped double entering charts. A week later, she mentioned at dinner that her team had finally gotten things under control. I nodded and passed the bread. Invoices stayed in my drafts. Whenever I hinted at billing, Victor waved it off. "Don't make this weird," he said once. "You wouldn't charge your own family." So I didn't. 5 years went by like that. Late nights, emergency fixes, quiet wins no one asked about. At holidays, I listened while they compared caseloads and board votes. When the conversation drifted toward technology, it skimmed the surface and moved on. "That stuff's helpful," Victor said, already checking his phone. "But it's support work." Support. The word settled in my chest and stayed there. I learned to keep my achievements small. Easier that way. Victor's house smelled like roasted meat and lemon cleaner. Shoes lined the entryway, all polished, all expensive. Someone had arranged place cards on the dining table. Thick paper, careful handwriting. Mine wasn't there. A cousin waved from the far end of the room. "You're over here," she said, pointing. The children's table sat near the sliding door. Paper plates, plastic cups, a spill already drying into the wood. I took the empty chair between a 9-year-old and a girl who was busy peeling the label off her water bottle. She smiled at me like we were in on the same joke. Victor tapped his glass. The room quieted. "To another year," he began, relaxed, confident. "Another year of saving lives. Long nights. Real work. A few nods. A few laughs." His eyes flicked toward our table. "Some people contribute in other ways." He added, "Light, spreadsheets, screens, support stuff." The room laughed. Not loudly, comfortably. Simone didn't look at me. She adjusted her napkin, then leaned toward the person beside her. The girl next to me whispered, "Do you want my roll?" I shook my head and smiled. "You should keep it." My hands stayed folded in my lap. I counted breaths until the heat in my face faded. Across the room, china clinked. Conversations resumed. I stayed where I was, chair legs too short, listening to the door slide open and close behind me. The nurse found me in the hallway just after dawn. "She asked that this go to you," she said, holding out an envelope. Thick paper, my name written carefully. Like my mother still had time. I didn't open it there. I tucked it into my coat and waited until I was back in her room. The chair was still warm, the cup of water untouched. I sat and ran my thumb along the edge of the envelope. "You always did this," I said quietly. "Left things where they'd be found." The paper inside was heavier than I expected. 2 pages. Cream-colored. Her handwriting smaller than usual, but steady. "I know who will be here when I'm gone," she wrote. "That tells me who you've all become." I swallowed and kept reading. "They will inherit what they can see. Buildings, equipment, titles." The words blurred. I blinked and went on. "You will inherit what moves underneath. Decisions, direction, the ability to stop what should never happen." My phone buzzed on the chair beside me. Simone's name flashed. I turned it face down. A knock. The nurse leaned in. "Take your time." "Thank you." The last lines were shorter. "You never needed permission. I just needed time." I folded the letter and held it against my chest. For a moment, the room felt crowded. Then it didn't. I stood, smoothed the blanket, and whispered, "I won't rush it." The envelope stayed in my pocket when I left. The email came through late, buried under meeting notes and condolences. Novamed Global, preliminary terms attached. I opened it at my kitchen counter, still in my coat. The fridge hummed. A neighbor laughed somewhere down the hall. Victor called before I reached the last page. "We're moving forward," he said, energized. "It's clean. Strategic. Everyone wins. Everyone." A pause. The network gets scale. I get the headache off my desk. I scrolled. The language was careful. The numbers weren't. 49% sold. A personal success bonus routed through an advisory arm. 14 million. Spread out just enough to look respectable. And the clinics. I said, Rainier and South Park. They're redundant. They're full. Silence. Then, you don't see the whole picture. I see it. I said, I just don't like it. Simone joined the call without warning. Her voice sounded tired. We don't have a choice, she said. The board's restless. This keeps control in the family. For now, I said. Victor laughed softly. You're overthinking it. This is business. I looked at my mother's letter on the table. Still folded. Business moves fast, he added. Try to keep up. The line went dead. I stayed there a moment longer, phone in my hand, the word redundant echoing louder than it should have. The conference room smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long. Someone had opened the blinds halfway. Not enough to help. Victor stood at the head of the table, jacket off, sleeves rolled like he was about to perform. Simone sat to his right, tablet already open. A few board members nodded when I walked in. No one moved their chair. You can listen, Victor said, glancing at the empty seat near the wall. This won't take long. I sat. The chair wobbled. Slides appeared on the screen. Growth curves. Clean arrows. The Novamed logo sat in the corner like it had always belonged there. This positions us for the next decade, Victor said. Speed matters. A hand went up. Community response. Victor waved it off. We'll manage messaging. I leaned forward. The Rainier Clinic closes under this. A quiet shift around the table. Simone didn't look up. Temporarily, Victor said. And it's underused. It's full. I said again. Victor's mouth tightened. He reached into his folder and slid an envelope across the table toward me. It stopped short of my elbow. Take this, he said. It's generous. You step away. Clean. I opened it. A check. 40,000. For your time. Simone added, finally meeting my eyes. And to avoid complications, I pushed the envelope back. I'm staying. Victor exhaled sharply. Don't be stubborn. You're not equipped for this level. I folded my hands together. Steady. Then let me watch. No one spoke. The projector hummed. I stayed in the seat they hadn't meant to give me. The attorney arrived late and didn't apologize. He set his folder down, adjusted his glasses, and looked around at the table like he was counting exits. Before we proceed, he said, there's an item Mrs. Langston asked to be read aloud. Victor frowned. This is a strategy meeting. It's a governance issue, the attorney replied. Related. A few people shifted. Chairs scraped softly. He opened the folder and slid a document forward. Not to Victor, to the center. This outlines voting authority, he continued, established over time, activated upon death. Victor laughed once. That's not necessary. I have control. The attorney glanced at me, then back at the table. Not entirely. Simone's tablet lowered an inch. Under this structure, he said, tapping the page, Iris Langston holds 31% of voting rights. The room went still. Even the projector fan seemed louder. That's not possible, Victor said. His voice rose. I would know. You would have had to look, the attorney said evenly. I felt my pulse in my ears. I didn't move. Victor pushed back his chair. This is a mistake. It's been reviewed, the attorney said. Multiple times. Simone finally spoke. How long? Over a decade. Victor turned to me. You knew I shook my head. I found out when she died. Silence again. Thicker this time. The attorney cleared his throat. There's more. The personal compensation tied to the Novamed agreement constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. A murmur. Someone whispered. That arrangement places personal gain ahead of institutional interest. He continued. Effective immediately. The board may vote to suspend executive authority. Victor's face went red, then pale. "This is absurd," he said. "You're siding with her." The attorney didn't look at me. "I'm siding with the documents." I stayed seated, hands folded, watching the rules finally apply. The clinic reopened on a Monday. No ribbon, no cameras. Just the front door unlocked and a handwritten sign taped crooked to the glass. A woman stood inside with her son, filling out forms slowly, careful with each line. The screen behind the desk glowed soft blue, the intake system finally running the way it was supposed to. I watched from the hallway. "You're early," the nurse said, recognizing me. "I just wanted to see it open." She nodded. "Your mother would have liked this." I stayed a few minutes, then left before anyone asked me to stay longer. My phone sat in the cup holder when I got back to the car. Missed messages. Victor, Simone, a few cousins I hadn't heard from in years. I didn't delete them. I didn't block anyone. I turned the phone face down and drove home. That night, I laid Helen's letter in the drawer with the rest of my papers. It didn't feel like a secret anymore. Just something finished. For a long time, Iris Langston had tried to earn a chair at a table that measured worth in the wrong units. Sitting alone in my kitchen, I realized I didn't feel empty about that anymore. I wasn't waiting to be invited. I already knew where I belonged. If you stay with stories like this, you know where to find us.